Okay, for this video, we are going to look a little bit into military and just how it works. So, we're first going to go over the generals. So, generals have specific characteristics which help you see what they're best at. This one, for example, is a pretty good defensive general. He's good at defense and elevated terrain. If we recruit another one, this one's even better in defense and has a little bit of an offense bonus and another defense bonus. So this guy gets up to 15% defensive bonus just from these two stats. And then another extra bit, so you'd get about 30% right here. This guy is a good offensive general. If you look here, he has a plus 5% offense and then gets a 10% kill rate. That's pretty good. He also gets the specific trait Pillage, which is also really good. You have this guy who's good at keeping supply and will live a little bit longer as well and loses a little bit less morale. Now, another thing you want to look at with your generals, I'm going to do a quick tech thing as the United States. We're going to want to look at just your offensive and defensive for each of these. So your infantry, very specifically, if you want a good defensive army, you're going to have nothing else in it other than the infantry. As you can see, they get a 35 defense. Now, if we go to the bottom army of the United States, they have a cavalry unit in as well. You're going to want to upgrade it by clicking Upgrade All Cavalry. Otherwise, you can click this little arrow and it'll upgrade it. But cavalry will change the offensive and defensive bonuses you get here. So if you click on the top one, it's 25 and 35, whereas with infantry, we're going to have to wait. So let's unpause the game. Once this upgrades, it'll actually improve our stats. So now it's 27. So as you can see here now, with skirmish infantry and the lancer, you get a 27, while with just skirmish infantry, you get 25. It also lowers your defensive stats by quite a bit. So this is going to be better to use for attack, and that's what you're going to want to use. If you add artillery, it'll also increase this offensive stat and decrease this defensive stat. Your artillery is best used for killing the enemy, just as you can see when you hover over it. Oh, wait. It's not going to let me look at it. But, okay, as you see here, it has a 20% kill rate. It does a lot of devastation also to the land that you're occupying with it, and the battles that it fights. You get a 30 offense and a 15 defense, and as you increase your tech in it, it increases the offensive bonus. So, with cavalry, Lancers is your last thing before you get light tanks, and it's going to be a long time before you get light tanks, so Lancers is really your last one. Lancers are good for the earlier to mid-game. They're good for this rapid offense bonus, what you get, which I have hovered right here. You get a special trait with cavalry. Unlike with just your regular offense, you get the extra one. You also get all these different ones. So pillage is when you have someone with a cruel trait. Here's how you can view all the traits, is just by clicking unavailable orders. So you click on your general, unavailable orders. Reckless advance, you can see this by your general having the trait reckless. Reckless is pretty good for the offense and good for the speed of your attack, but it's kind of bad for your morale loss and your recovery rate. Also, you have a huge chance of getting a blunder, and that is awful. So it's not necessarily the best. You also have pillage. This is a pretty good trait for when you're facing a military that has more manpower than you, because you get a huge kill rate from it. You get plus 30% kill rate. You might not attack as fast, but that doesn't matter. You're also going to do a lot of morale damage to the enemy, which is going to make it easier to beat them in fights. You're going to occupy less land though, which will suck. So it's just basically, this is wearing your enemy down slowly. You also have cautious advance. Now this is going to be you're going to attack even slower than pillage. You're going to take less damage to your morale. You're going to recover a little bit more, and you have a chance for losing 10% less casualties and minus 10% morale loss. So this can be good, but you're really just going to want to use advanced front instead. Then you got heavy barrage. So this is when you have an artillery experienced commander, and each one gives you a special bonus. So as you see here, just having 5%. When you get an expert, that's a huge, huge bonus. Each one has the chance to hit mud, and if you hit mud, let's see if we can go up into that one. That's not going to let us. But if you hit mud, it gives you a negative modifier as well, which kind of sucks. But you also get a pretty big kill rate and devastation rate. Devastation is basically when you start taking territory, it'll make it harder for the people to, or it'll make it so basically people start dying faster. You're starting to kill the population in that region. You also have, let's go back to here. You also have heavy advance. Now this also gives you a little bit more advance and stuff, so on. This is with heavy tanks. So this will be a while. You're never really gonna have to worry about this if you don't play a game all the way through. And then you have your defensive things. Adamant defense is a really good trait. You just use a little bit more supply, but otherwise it gives really good bonuses. You have your counter charge. Now this is what you can use when you have a brave general. This can be good, and plus you have that giant kill rate, which is really good. Then you have your last stand. I generally wouldn't recommend using this unless you're someone like Russia, because if you're a small country, you really can't afford taking high casualties. Delaying tactics can also be pretty good. You get camouflage chance plus 200%, which is good for your army defense, and then surprise maneuver, which is also pretty good. But overall, your main ones you're going to use probably in most games is advance, rapid advance, defense, adamant defense, and pillage, which are the ones that I would mainly recommend. So moving on from that, we're going to look at your mobilization. So you can see this in a few different ways. So one is just by clicking on an army. So just click on your army, mobilization. You get to see the supplies that you use. You're always going to really want to have extra supplies or even luxury supplies because it increases your attack by 10-20% eventually. And once you get later in the game, you're going to want these bonuses. Then you have all your different supplements. These are going to help with morale recovery. Then you have your transportation. This will help with your conscripts, so you're going to form your conscripts a little bit faster when using these. So there's a bonus to these. I recommend if you ever have rail transport, use them if you're using conscripts. And then for the US, we can afford chocolate, tobacco, and liquor, but opium isn't really in our market. Your reconnaissance is going to help you occupy more land, so you're going to win less battles and take more territory, which is always really good. Your support equipment is going to help with your offense and your kill rate, which is later in the game. And then you have your medical support, which helps with recovery rate. So these are all really good things. You're going to want to look at your mobilization quite often. If you want to quick select it with all your armies instead of having to do this with each individual one, you just click on the one, shift click on each one, and then you can quickly just click them all. Then you can also go to military and see your mobilization as well for each individual army. Another important thing, what you can do is go click onto these, and then you have your conscripts. You have your conscripts and your regular army. So your regular building up army size is just right here. You're going to just click and recruit. We have a national militia for a law, which only allows us +5. If you have professional army, you're allowed a maximum of 100 barracks per state, but we're only allowed +5, which is fine because we get a huge conscript rate. Another law that will add to your military strength is National Guard. It'll add even more conscripts that you can have, so that might be a good law to get. If you use conscripts though, compared to a professional army, your just regular standing army, one issue you might run into is you might end up having your conscripts recruit too many cavalry or too many artillery, which will lead to a negative organization buff, which will start to affect your offense and defensive ratings, which will suck. So you're gonna want to have like multiple different armies. What I would recommend is having some cavalry armies, some artillery armies, and some just pure defense skirmish infantry armies, or just pure defense line infantry armies. You got to remember, if you have pure infantry, they're going to have the best defensive stats in the game. If you have a mixture of infantry and artillery, you're going to have really good offense. And if you have a mixture of infantry and cavalry, you're also going to have really good offense. Your if you want the best offensive army, it's going to be artillery. But if you want to capture land as fast as possible, you're going to want to use cavalry. So artillery, eventually you get to research it a little bit faster. It's faster, or earlier in the tech tree. Shrapnel artillery is going to be better than having a cavalry army. But if you are beating an enemy severely, you can just try and win the war quickly by using lancers and taking as much territory as possible and ending the war faster by capitulating them and occupying more of their land. And that's a little bit just about the army. Now if we move on to navy, you're going to have about the same thing. This is basically your infantry, and this is basically your artillery or your cavalry. You're going to want to have about an equal amount to maximize your highest possible offense and your highest possible defense. So this is a little different. Your frigates kind of suck for both defense and offense, whereas your man-o-wars are better in both categories. So you're going to want as many man-o-wars as possible, which means you're going to want an equal amount. Because if you have too many man-o-wars, you're going to get that same negative organization trait, which will slowly decrease your offense and defensive capabilities. So you're going to always want an equal amount of the two, which would be lower, you know. But you're not going to have to really worry about this once you start upgrading. Your frigates are going to start turning better and better with, you know, torpedo boats and destroyers and monitors. And your stats are going to constantly change, and you're going to constantly have to upgrade your buildings. Eventually, you're also going to get this third slot, which gives you submarines and aircraft carriers. You're going to have to remember these are basically treated like infantry, so you're always going to want to have an equal amount between the two, or the three. So you could have 50 infantry, for example, 25 artillery, and 25 cavalry, but I never really do that because you're going to want to maximize the offensive capabilities of your armies. So I generally do infantry, artillery, and infantry and cavalry. And if you are not using if you want a specific army to attack, then you can, for example, say this is artillery army and you want to use your cavalry, just put them on defense for a while, and then use your cavalry army to constantly take land. And that is pretty much all you need to know. The last thing I would tell you to always look at is in your market. Once your guns and your equipment start to get super expensive, your organization could also severely go down. And if that happens, then you're going to want to put max subversions on your imports to make sure that you get this. You're also going to have to worry about getting blockaded, which completely cuts off your trade, or even having your convoys raided. Raiding convoys can completely screw up your nation, especially if you have puppets, because it's going to increase their liberty desire when they no longer have market access to you. So say I'm playing the UK and I have 0 convoys, like I'm in the negatives. I am negative 2,000 convoys. India, Australia, Canada, South Africa, they're all going to start gaining independence because they're no longer going to receive complete market access to us. And if they don't receive market access to us, it makes everything in their country way more expensive and completely messes up their economy, so they're getting angry. So your navy's always important. Plus, you have your little naval invasions that you can do. If you're ever losing a war, I would recommend start using naval invasions to start distracting and pulling troops off of your front line so that they have to fight your naval invasions. The AI usually always sends troops away, so that is all I would recommend for your armies and so on. You should be able to do everything with the stuff that I have taught you. You should be able to keep an equal amount of these two to assure that you have the maximum stats. You're also going to want, generally speaking, only one general to, or one admiral to, and you're going to want about as many generals as possible with your army because it'll make you attack faster. But with your admirals, you it'll start splitting up your navy, and you might fight multiple battles. You want all of your troops in one battle. So say I have 100 ships and I have multiple admirals, and they have multiple ships in the region. It's gonna start. It's not going to put all of your stuff in that battle. It's going to split it up in between battles, and it's going to actually cause you to lose battles in your navy. Being on raid convoys is always really good because it'll cause the other person to have to use interception, and that means they're going to be in the offense and you're going to be in defense. And right now, with man of wars and frigates, who's ever in the defensive battle is generally speaking going to win unless it's a numbers game. So if they have like double your number and they're on offense and you're on defense, you're going to most likely lose. But if you have about the same exact, then you're more likely to beat them. So Navy is a little bit tricky, but it's not too bad when you start to learn it. Your army is more simple. You just, advance and defend based on what you see. And again, your artillery is good at killing as many people as possible, while your cavalry is good at taking as much land as fast as possible. And then your infantry is just really good at defending. Another thing you have to look at is your budget and making sure you have high military wages because it increases your morale recovery and your armed forces approval, which is quite important because your armed forces give you a plus 10% and plus 10% offense and defense modifier. If you can increase their clout to 20%, then you get this stat, but it doubles to 20% for both offense and defense. So a way to do that is by recruiting specific generals and promoting them. Every time you promote them, it increases their interest group political strength. So if I just start increasing one, so currently let's look at it, it's 7.9. If we unpause the game, it's now 9% because we promoted that guy. You're going to want to recruit a bunch of armed forces ones, possibly if you really are planning on going warmonger mode and take as much stuff. You're going to want a strong one. You can promote your generals for each interest group, and it will increase the clout of that interest group. Now, if you want to lower the clout of interest groups, you're going to want to fire basically any of the generals that you absolutely hate. You don't have to do this. It's also going to make them angry, so you got to be careful about that. If you, for example, you're trying to make the landowners weak, you just got to get rid of these policies that promote the landowners, which would be any slavery, tenant farmers. It would also be serfdom that increases their strength heavily, and then also hereditary bureaucrats. It would make the landowners more powerful as well. But that's about all for the military. And I hope all that knowledge helps you. So yeah, thank you for watching.